Today we're talking about Celestial Legion Helm, Dynasty Plate Helm. Both of these items buffs Celestial Legion's rise to fame and some other things connected to it. We're also going to take Breastplate of Valor into the equation. Let's talk about the changes that these items have received. We'll start with Dynasty Plate Helm. For Bruiser Mages and Guardians, a bridge item with a bit of defense and offense should be a solid choice. Dynasty Plate Helm hasn't quite lived up to that role, so we're increasing its overall potency. Dynasty Plate Helm increased magical power from 45 to 55. This was in patch 6.1, and what didn't happen was Dynasty Plate Helm increasing in popularity. We'll talk in just a bit about why that is the case. But we also need to look at Celestial Legion Helm here. This one is getting a nerf in the upcoming patch 6.2. Although this item might not have been one of the most popular, it was putting up extreme results at high skill levels. Celestial Legion Helm was simply too stat efficient for its cost. It was leading to mage ADCs pushing out hunters and making mid lane mages nearly impossible to gank. As we adjust the jungle role, we want to nerf this counter to them at the same time. That didn't work, I guess. And make this a more difficult itemization decision. Increased cost from 2050 to 2150. Decreased physical protection gained per stack from 10 to 7. While Celestial Legion Helm was originally an item that was popular in the pro scene, it has now definitely found its way down to casuals and whatnot as well. And I guess I'm partially to blame for that because I kept promoting this item in my videos, kept saying it's a very, very strong item. Today, for the first time, I had to face not one, not two, but 3 enemies with Celestial Legion Helm on one team. They're solo, their mid laner, and their support. We're all building it. And yeah, that's how far we've come. So it's definitely popular everywhere now. And that nerf is way overdue as such. And we will look into if this nerf is even enough. And we also look at how Dynasty Plate Helm compares. And we can also kind of look at Breastplate of Valor to have a bit of a control variable here that is just an item that's catered towards heavier defense as well, but also brings something else that would be useful for mages, for damage mages, for tanky mages. The reason why I can say that Celestial Legion Helm and Breastplate of Valor are comparable is mostly due to duel. In duel, Breastplate used to be the gold standard for any ability-based character really that was trying to counter out physical damage and also wanted a bit of extra damage themselves through CDR. Dynasty Plate Helm was never good enough because the flat pen isn't really useful in duel, whereas the option that is more popular nowadays is Celestial Legion Helm. It's kind of replaced Breastplate, so they are very much competing in a sense. And I think it's very interesting that in this case we can really say that the duel meta was ahead of the conquest meta. It was way more popular in duel for a very long time. It's only now really rolling into conquest. But is it here to stay? For that, we need to look at the numbers. We have quite a few different numbers that are relevant here. First of all, obviously, the power. With Celestial Legion Helm, we get 60 power in both the old and the new version. With Dynasty Plate Helm, we get 45. With Breastplate, we get none, we get the CDR, the 20% instead. And with Jade Mountain Helm, the tier 2 of Celestial Legion Helm, we get 20. Why that's important, we'll talk about in a bit. We should, however, point out that different from the other items, Dynasty Plate Helm also has 10 penetration, which technically ups the damage output quite a fair bit and makes it at least equal to 60 power, depending on how the guard you're using works, really how much base damage they have and how much scaling they have, but overall it should increase the damage output by a significant amount. Now for the physical defense. If we're talking about the defense without any passives, without any extra stacks, then Celestial Legion Helm has 40 physical defense. That is actually very close to Dynasty Plate Helm with 35 physical defense. Breastplate of Valor wins here with 65 physical defense, quite a bit more. Jade Mountain Helm comes in close behind Dynasty Plate Helm with 30 physical defense. But we also have to keep in mind that Celestial Legion Helm can stack extra physical defense. And with how the passive currently works, you will have this extra defense at the start of most fights. The passive stacks incredibly fast. You get a stack every 2 seconds until you have the 5 stacks, the max stacks after 10 seconds. Once you're in a fight, you're probably not going to restack this because you have to get out of the fight or out of taken physical damage for 5 seconds from guards to start restacking. I think it's very important here to note that this is only from gods. So if you have this thing on and you have your stack defense and you get hit by minions in a wave, it doesn't lose you any stacks because it's just based on god damage and not on minion damage. And I think that is honestly somewhat unfair. I think this should be something that should easily be punished by minions as well. And if you keep fighting into minions, then you should not get the protections or even lose protections. Especially with the current super low stacking time, that could be increased as well. But that's just my take. So the old version of this comes with 90 physical defense in total that then slowly stacks down, and the new version will come with 75 physical defense. That means it's not quite as overwhelming in terms of total protection post-nerf, but still in the same region as, say, Height of the Nemean Lion or Spectral Armor, for example. And it still comes with a lot of power as well. It does, however, mean that Jade Emperor's Crown will outclass it a little bit in terms of the total damage output reduction from enemies, as well as the overall survivability, as Jade Emperor's Crown also has health, but way less power in return. What stats do we have outside of that? 20 MP5 on Celestial Legion Helm makes your abilities very, very spammable, none on Dynasty Plate Helm, and 10 on Breastplate of Valor. Breastplate also comes with 300 mana though, so that should more than offset that and also gives it some benefit for like builds with Book of SLOTH. Then again, Breastplate has those 20% cooldown reduction, which kind of give you damage in a different way, but only for your abilities. Now let's look at the price. Old Celestial Legion Helm came in at 2,050 gold, the new one comes in at 2,150. Dynasty Plate Helm is 1,700, so we're talking about a 450 gold difference here. Breastplate of Valor is 2,300, so still the most expensive one. Jade Mountain Helm is 1,200 gold, and why that's so important is something we'll talk about in a moment. But first, let's look at the effective health that you get from these items. On level 10, a mage will roughly have 1,000 health and roughly 35 physical protection. It's a bit rounded here, but those are the approximate values and they make it very easy to calculate. That means with Celestial Legion Helm, you have 1,750 effective health in both the old and new version by default without the passive. With the passive, you used to have up to 2,250 effective physical health, now it's 2,100. Still quite a lot. Dynasty Plate Helm gives you 1,700 in total, same as its price. That doesn't change because it doesn't have an extra stacking passive, and the same goes for Breastplate of Valor, which always has 2,000 effective health. Jade Mountain Helm has 1,650 effective health. Now looking at these stats, there is something you may already notice. Jade Mountain Helm for 1,200 gold is barely worse when it comes to survivability than Dynasty Plate Helm. It's only a 5 defense difference, 50 effective health at level 10. So if you're looking for survivability from early ganks and you want to build into the tier 1 helmet first, that's the same situation in either case. You can go into Dynasty or you can get Jade Mountain Helm even earlier. So the pure survivability isn't drastically different. Obviously, Dynasty Plate Helm gives you a little bit more damage. Now here's the thing. You bridge the gap better with Jade Mountain Helm because you have this mid-price item that's not as expensive as Dynasty, and then you can build Celestial. And Celestial will give you way more survivability overall, while also giving you a high amount of raw power and also giving you MP5. So the cheaper price tag of Dynasty Plate Helm can hardly be a selling point when there's such a good tier 2 item for the same purpose in between already. The only big benefit of Dynasty Plate Helm is the penetration, but really, is it worth skipping out on an overall better item that gives you so many benefits overall? I also put this into practice to feel how different these items feel when it comes to survivability, and I actually found myself building Celestial after I already built Dynasty in games where the physical aggression was heavy, because the survivability from Dynasty alone was just not enough. It does negate some damage, but it's still completely in the shadow of Celestial Legion Helm. Now, Breastplate is something that has this overall survivability and also offers the mana and has a tier 2, so it kind of can compete a little bit better at this point. But honestly, I think most mages especially will opt into the more damage-oriented options. Something that supports can maybe think about a little bit more, or like, for example, Bacchus, the high aggression supports. But then you typically don't want it too early as well because it's a little bit too expensive for that. And it's something that solos can think about more now as well. But overall, I think Celestial is still a super strong choice, and even with those nerfs, those 2 nerfs at the same time, it will still remain a very strong option. Again, I think that for supports, Jade Emperor's Crown is going to be something that's going to be looked at if they can't make use of Lotus Crown to begin with. And maybe also just normal support aura items. But I think, especially for mid laners, the Reign of Celestial as a safe option, or for ADC mages like Freya, this is not over. This is still what you want to pick in most situations to have the best mix of stats possible. And I'd like to see that tackled either through changing the passive, as I talked about before, or maybe adjusting other stats on the item like MP5 to give it a little bit less overall value, or maybe tackling a little bit of the power as well to just give this item a bit more of a niche and make it a little less versatile for everyone. That's my verdict so far. I hope you enjoyed this overview. If you're new to the channel, feel free to sub and move the bell, that helps me out. And if you liked the video, feel free to click the like button. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.